And predictably, they filed a lawsuit because in Washington, it's easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire a federal employee. Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
Welcome back to American Mindset, the channel where we expose the truth, fight for American values, and hold the powerful accountable. Today, we're diving into a Senate hearing that has a lot of people talking. Senator John Kennedy grilled FBI Director Kash Patel. And folks, this was a masterclass in asking the tough questions that the mainstream media is too scared to touch. This hearing exposed corruption, double standards, and outright lies. So buckle up, patriots, because we're going to break it all down. Let's watch the video.
Mr. Director, worry not. We'll make sure your agency is adequately funded. This judge you arrested in Wisconsin, she was breaking federal law, wasn't she?
Yes, that's why we arrested her.
She was helping an illegal immigrant escape being taken into custody. Is that right?
Yes, and the field agents decided to open the case, work the case.
And as Americans, do we get to pick and choose which laws we want to follow?
We do not.
If you're a state court judge, do you get to decide you don't want to follow federal law?
No.
And if you violate federal law, you get arrested, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
That's called equal treatment under the law, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. I think Ms. Page worked for Justice. The Inspector General found in its investigation that they hated President Trump and they really wanted Secretary Clinton to win. Is that true?
That's correct, sir.
And this would be the same same Ms. Page who sent an email to Mr. Strzok with whom she was having an affair. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Mr. Strzok with the FBI, senior official at the FBI replied, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Did I read that correctly?
You did, Senator.
Okay. Now, Ms. Page got quit before she could get fired. Mr. Strzok was fired. And predictably, they filed a lawsuit because in Washington, it's easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire a federal employee. Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
So the Attorney General decided to give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 after they were fired after actively interfering in the 2016 election. Is that right?
My understanding is that was a settlement they agreed to.
Pass me the sick bucket, please. The Hunter Biden laptop. In October of 2016, shortly before the election, the New York Post wrote a story that was widely covered talking about Mr. Hunter Biden's influence peddling scheme based on his laptop. A couple of weeks later, Secretary of State, soon-to-be Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, organized a group of 51 so-called intelligence experts. Had some real rock stars on the list. Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, and they said Oh, no, no, no. The story in the New York Post is not true. It's based on Russian disinformation. You remember that?
I do, Senator, as the lead investigator for Russiagate for the House Intel Committee.
Yeah, yeah. The FBI had had the laptop for 10 months, hadn't they?
They did, Senator.
So the FBI knew right before the election that it wasn't Russian disinformation, didn't they?
And that was confirmed by the Inspector General's report.
Yeah. Who at the FBI refused to let the FBI tell the American people the truth?
I don't have that name in front of me, sir.
Well, would you look?
I will, sir.
I'd like to know. I'd like a name, not a division. I'd like the name. Person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production to the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. As you're well aware, DOJ...
Let's start with the Wisconsin judge who was arrested for helping an illegal immigrant escape federal custody. Can you believe that? A judge, someone who is supposed to uphold the law, was actively breaking it. And what does Kash Patel say? Yes, she was breaking federal law. That's why we arrested her. Now, here's the thing, folks. Senator Kennedy asked the million-dollar question. Do we, as Americans, get to pick and choose which laws we want to follow? The answer is no. But apparently, if you're an activist judge or some elite bureaucrat, you think you're above the law. This is the kind of hypocrisy that's tearing our country apart. If we don't enforce the law equally, we don't have a country. Period. Now, let's talk about the FBI. Remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok? These two were senior officials in the FBI during the 2016 election, and they hated President Trump with a fiery passion. The Inspector General found that they sent text messages back and forth, plotting against Trump. One of the most damning texts was from Strzok, who said, No, he won't become president. Well, stop it. Let that sink in. Patriots. These were people in positions of power actively working to undermine the will of the American voters. And yet, what happens? The FBI gives Strzok $1.2 million and Page $800,000 to settle lawsuits after they were fired. Kennedy nailed it when he said, pass me the sick bucket. Because that's exactly how I feel. These people were fired for their blatant corruption, and they still walked away with a fat paycheck, paid for by you, the taxpayer. Unacceptable. Here's where it gets even worse. Remember the Hunter Biden laptop story? In October 2020, right before the election, the New York Post published a bombshell report exposing Hunter Biden's influence peddling schemes. But instead of letting the American people know the truth, the establishment went into overdrive to cover it up. Anthony Blinken, who is now Secretary of State, organized a group of 51 so-called intelligence experts to claim the story was Russian disinformation. Let me name a few of these experts: John Brennan, James Clapper, Leon Panetta, names you've heard before. These are the same people who've been lying to us for years. And here's the kicker. The FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop for 10 months. They knew it wasn't Russian disinformation. They could have told the American people the truth, but they didn't. Why? Because the truth would have hurt Joe Biden's chances of winning the election. This is election interference, plain and simple. Now, let's get to the question everyone's been dying to know. Senator Kennedy asked Kash Patel point blank, did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself, or was he murdered? And what does Patel say? He believes Epstein hung himself in a cell. Look, I've got a bridge to sell you if you believe that. Epstein was one of the highest profile prisoners in the country. He had dirt on some of the most powerful people in the world. And yet, there were camera malfunctions, guards asleep on the job, and he just so happened to hang himself in one of the most secure detention centers in America? Come on. Patel says the FBI is working on releasing the files about Epstein's death in the near future. But Kennedy wasn't buying it, and neither am I. He asked, before I die? And that's the real question. How long are they going to drag this out? Why are they hiding the truth? I'll tell you why. Because that truth would expose the rot in our institutions. Folks, this hearing wasn't just about Jeffrey Epstein or Hunter Biden or Lisa Page. It's about the larger issue of accountability. The elites in Washington think they're untouchable. They think they can break the law, interfere in elections, and cover up scandals without consequence. And you know what? For too long, they've been right. But Senator Kennedy showed us what real oversight looks like. He asked the tough questions, demanded answers, and called out the hypocrisy. That's what we need more of. Not politicians who roll over and play nice, but fighters who stand up for the truth. At the end of the day, patriots, this hearing should light a fire under all of us. We cannot sit back and let this corruption go unchecked. We need to demand accountability. We need to demand transparency. And most importantly, we need to elect leaders who will fight for we the people, not the elites. If you're as fired up as I am, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to American Mindset. Together, we can wake up more Americans to the truth and take our country back. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and God bless the United States of America. Until next time, this is American Mindset, signing off.